Good evening to this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful crowd. There's two screens. Hopefully everyone can see. Yes. Yeah, if you're sitting in the front, you can't see the second screen, but you have this one next to us, and this one is good enough. This one will work. What? This is your screen, yeah. Now look at that. I have the one on my computer as well. Baruch Hashem. It's an honor, privilege to have you all here. I want to first thank our sponsor for the dinner, Alan and Ella Lich. Unfortunately, I had an emergency today and ended up in Tallahassee right now, but hopefully it's a good thing. But so I want to thank him for sponsoring so we can all enjoy a delicious Israeli dinner. Next week will be falafel. Well, next week will be shawarma and pargiot. So make sure you come back next week for part 2. And I also want to start with a prayer for the people of Israel. We are gathered not only to learn about Israel, but we're giving them our hearts and our souls. So let's take just 1 minute. I'll read it slowly. You can read it along together with me. Shir, Lamalot, Esa, Einai, El Heharim, Me'ayin Yavo Ezri. Ezri Me'im Adonai, Osei Shamayim Va'aretz, Al Yitain Lamot Raglacha, Al Yanum Shomracha, Hine Lo Yanum Velo Yishan, Shomer Yisrael, Adonai Shomracha, Adonai Tzilcha, Al Yad Yeminecha, Yomam Hashemesh Lo Yakeka, V'yareach Balayla, Adonai Yishmarcha Mikol Ra, Yishmar Es Nafshecha, Adonai Yishmar Tzeischa Uvoecha, Me'ata V'ad Olam. Okay, thank you. Now let me have a little drink. L'chaim to this beautiful crowd. Although tonight's topic is not a laughing matter at all, and although I have a lot to say, I would not, God forbid, not give you a joke because Melanie would not forgive me if I did that. I wanted to come back next week. So I will start with a joke, of course, God forbid otherwise. It's a great joke about this Jew that comes into a bakery, kosher bakery, I don't know, in Manhattan somewhere. Says, how much is a bagel? Tell him $5 for a bagel. $5 for a bagel? So the guy behind the counter says, yeah, $4 for the bagel and $1 for Israel. Okay, he's a proud Jew. Who's not going to give $1 to Israel, right? You go to Publix and they want you to round up your exchange to, I don't know, $1 for Israel. Okay, so fine, I'll pay $5 for the bagel. Comes back a week later, he wants to buy a challah. How much is the challah? $10. $10 for a challah? Says, yeah, $7 for the challah, $3 for Israel. Okay, $3 for Israel, already a little steep, but who's going to say no to Israel, right? You can't say no to Israel, fine. So he gives the $10. Come back 2 weeks later, he wants a cheesecake. How much is a cheesecake? $50. $50 for a cheesecake? Yeah, it's $30 for the cheesecake, $20 for Israel. So that's it. I want to speak to the manager. There's no way you can force me to pay $20 for a cheesecake for Israel. I want to speak to the owner of the store now. I says, don't get upset, no problem. Israel, someone wants to talk to you. Okay. So, my friends, as I said, tonight's discussion is really not a laughing matter at all. Many Jews are living with anxiety and with fear and with trepidation and with this constant nagging thought in the back of our heads, what's going on with our family in Israel, lots of uncertainty, lots of confusion. And what many people don't realize is that the Torah doesn't only offer the proverbial, prayers and thoughts. Torah actually has real, concrete solutions, a lasting prescription by which we could find lasting and eternal peace and security in our homeland, in the land that God gave us, the land of Israel. So I'm going to spend only 2 minutes going through the problems that we need to address tonight, because we all know the problems. But just to make sure we're on the same page, there are several issues that are facing the Jewish people. Number one, if we can get this to work, is that Jews in Israel have died and that they are dying. And this is very important because although it's true that October 7th was the greatest one day in terms of civilian casualties in the entire last century, but in no way was October 7th the beginning of the murder and the spilling of innocent Jewish blood. This is not a new phenomenon in any way, shape, or form. For the last 80 years, Israel has lost thousands of civilians and soldiers to terrorist attacks, to a never-ending attempt by our enemies to kill us in any way that they could, whether it's axes, cars, knives, bombs, you name it, they've thought of it. And so the fact that Jews are dying is not a new issue that suddenly started on October 7th. It was only magnified, but it's not a new issue. Number two is that there's no real plan that anyone has to end the cycle of violence. And again, this is a cycle of violence that's been going on for basically the entire history of Israel. We have cycles as, it gets worse, 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 and then whatever happens. And then we have a temporary period of relative calm for a few years, however long it lasts. Then things heat up and it escalates, and then there's another war or whatever it is. And there's this never-ending cycle. And no one has really found a solution how to end this continuous cycle that we're dealing with. And then finally, number three is that Jews around the world are being exposed to all of this anti-Semitism again, which is not a new thing, but it has absolutely been magnified and accelerated by the attacks of October 7th. Okay, so we have clarity on these are the issues that we are facing, right? And I think everyone in this room will more or less agree that if you boil down all of the issues going on in Israel, these are the problems. Number one, Jews are dying. Number two, we need a plan to end this cycle of violence. Number three, we need a way to be able to combat this, including in the world, including right here in Florida, to be able to stop this hatred that's been spewing out. And again, most of us assumed after October 7th, the whole world will see a very clear right and wrong. That's what most of us assumed. And the opposite is true. Not only did we not get the support that we might have expected to get, but we've actually been, some of us, I don't think I have, but many of us have been shocked by the outright hatred that we've been forced to see in some of the bastions of sophistication and, education, et cetera, in our society, which has been obviously very, very disconcerting and scary. So now that we know the problems, here's the good news. Okay, now that we know the problems, I'm running for president. No, I'm just joking. So now that we know the problems, so here's the good news. The good news is, number one, that now more than ever before, people are looking for new answers. We're looking for new solutions. There was a certain box, a certain, preconceived or pre-accepted notions, these axiomatic truths, if you will, that two-state solution or land for peace or whatever the classic answers have been for decades. And today, more than ever before in modern day Israeli history, the world has come to recognize that, in fact, we need a different answer. We need to find a different a solution, and from the political leadership to the leaders of Israeli government, to the IDF, to the media, to your average Jew, to your average non-Jew. People are looking for new answers and new solutions. So people are more open and more receptive today to what we have to say than ever before. Number two, the second good news is that the Torah has the answers. The Torah has the answers. There are answers in the Torah, clear, black and white, practical messages of direction and guidance that can absolutely help us live a more safe, secure existence in our homeland of Israel. And number three is, as I already said, because people are open to the answers, they're open to new direction. Today, we have the ability to make a bigger impact than probably ever before in our lives. Because until recently, most people, unless you were really, really into it, most people didn't care. Most people weren't paying attention. Today, everyone is listening. Everyone is aware. People are open. And today, we, the average person, has the ability to make a bigger impact than we can imagine we could ever have made. And this really will be next week's conversation, so I'm not going to address it again tonight, but the power that we have, if we're properly prepared to articulate correctly and with confidence the Torah perspective, the ability that we have to make an impact today is better than ever before. Okay? So let's get straight into it. I'm going to start by giving the credentials, so to say, of the Rebbe. Almost everything I'm going to say tonight is based on the wisdom of the Torah as articulated with tremendous heartfelt passion, with tears, with unbelievable angst from the Rebbe describing what was going on in Israel. Hundreds, if not thousands of hours, the Rebbe publicly spoke about the security situation in Israel. There was no topic that personally hurt the Rebbe on a visceral level, on a personal level, than the pain and the suffering that the Rebbe had seeing what was being done from a political and leadership level in Israel. It caused the Rebbe tremendous pain. The Rebbe spoke about it hundreds of times, said it was probably thousands of hours that the Rebbe spent speaking about this, plus writing letters, meeting with all levels of Israeli government and the IDF. So here is our first video for tonight.
אני לא התכוננתי ולא חשבתי, ונשב עם אחד כזה גדול בתורה, ודבר איתו על למה אריק שרון לא ניצח, או למה טקטית הוא לא השתמש בדלק שהם הכינו לעצמם. או ערכו הסגולי של חיל האוויר במלחמה כוללת. או למה יש שיכון משפחות בתוך הבסיסים ולא על יד, כי זה שייך לכונות.
הפגישה הלכה כשעתיים. הפגישה החלה באמת בדיון בנושא הזה של מצב יהודי תוניסיה. והרבי מיד אמר לי שהוא זה שנתן את ההנחיות לא לצאת. שיש לו מערכת איסוף אינפורמציה ממקומות שונים, והגיע למסקנה שאין נשקפת סכנה כזאת ליהודים במקום.
The Rebbe spoke to me about this with such powerful foresight, well before anybody, but anybody, had ever written or said a word about it. Namely, that the emergence of an Islamic Iran carries with it the seeds of jihadism that will spread across the Middle East, threaten Europe, and ultimately the whole of Western civilization. I am talking about a discourse with him over 30 years ago, well over 30 years ago. But I recall vividly the fact that this was almost in the realm of nevuah, or, if you will, as a political scientist, in the realm of strategic analysis.
של סוריה ושל האבים באיראן, וכניסה לזה שהם נגד ארצות הברית לא פחות מאשר ארץ ישראל, ולא עוד יותר.
רפול קיבל לזה בכבוד גדול, ואחריו כל האלופים לקחו. כל מי שקיבל את השטר, וכולם קיבלו, כולם כתבו את השם ושם האמא לבקשת ברכה של הרבי, ואני שלחתי את זה. לאחר מכן הייתי בקבוצת פקודות בתל נוף, גם כן נכנסתי באמצע. אני ביקשתי, אמרתי שיש כאן כסף שהרבי מלובביץ' ביקש לחלק לאנשי צבא. הם כולם קיבלו את זה, כולם כתבו את שמם ושם האמא לקבלת ברכה. כאשר בערב שבת היה הפצצה של הכור האטומי, במחשבה לאחור הבנו מה עשה כאן הרבי.
I was the commander of the Southern Front, which included Sinai and the front along the Suez Canal. They were facing the Soviets and the Egyptians, of course. Then he sent me a letter describing the disaster that will happen to the Jewish people. That was, I think, about 4 years before the war. What terrible damage and the tragedy this Bar-Lev line will bring. Totally dealing with a military problem, analyzing as a military expert what will happen. As a matter of fact, that happened. That happened. It was a tragedy, but that happened.
Okay. Hold on, other videos do that. Okay, so the point is that the Rebbe had a tremendous level of insight and foresight onto a tremendous level of foresight of what was happening. But the point is that what we're going to be talking about are truths that were as relevant then, they're relevant now. Because we're not talking about particular political situations. What we're going to be talking about are issues that are fundamental issues. And fundamental issues have fundamental solutions. And that is what we need to address tonight, to understand what are the Torah's fundamental values and principles, and then we can apply them to any given situation. So let us start, my friends. What is the first basic Jewish value when it comes to life? Well, be fruitful and multiply, that's true. But I agree with that, by the way. The first value in the Torah of one of the most fundamental of all Jewish values is that life is of infinite human value. And it sounds pretty basic today, but for most of human history, that was not an accepted fact. Most societies did not place infinite value on human life. There was a hierarchy of more important people and less valuable people, but I don't want to get distracted. But the point is that in the Jewish Weltanschauung, human life is the number one priority. There is nothing in the world more important than human life, which is why if someone's life is in danger on Shabbat, what do? We desecrate Shabbos in order to save a life. And the fact is not that you're allowed to desecrate Shabbos to save a life. You're obligated to desecrate Shabbos to save a life. You don't find someone, the rabbi himself could do it, should do it, because human life is fundamentally more important. I've said this many times, I'll say it again. In Judaism, there is no right to self-defense. I say that clearly. In Judaism, there is no right to self-defense. We have an obligation to self-defense. There's a huge difference between a right and an obligation. A right is something you can choose to exercise or not exercise. So you have the right to bear arms, and you can choose if you want to carry a gun or not. That's your choice. When you see a life in danger, you are not given the choice by the Torah or by God to decide, do I want to protect this life? Do I want to defend this life or not? You are not given the authority to be able to make your own calculations. Let me see. Okay, you know what? I like my life, so let me fight to defend it. In Judaism, we have an obligation to defend life, to do everything we can to extend life, to protect life, to prolong life. And therefore, if in the Jewish worldview, human life is of such importance and such an ultimate priority, then anything which poses a threat to human life must be eliminated. Again, it's not a choice. You have a choice if you want to eat this food or that food. You have a choice if you get dessert or not get dessert. It's Mushka's brownies, so Simi made the brownies. So Simi made the brownies, so it's not really a choice because they're going to be so good. It's not a choice. But you have that choice. When a life is being threatened, Judaism does not give you the option to choose if I want to defend or fight for that life or not. Fighting for a Jewish life, or for any life, human life, not even a Jewish life, fighting for a human life is top priority in the Jewish worldview. That's right, clear. In fact, there is a very famous statement in the Talmud, perhaps one of the most famous statements of the Talmud, which is from the Talmud in Sanhedrin, page 72, which says that if someone is coming to kill you, hashkein b'hargle, which means rise up and kill him first. This is a Jewish value that we must not wait until we're even attacked, must not wait until we're actually being killed. The moment we see someone coming to kill us, we rise up to kill them first. So this is going to explain to us and present us the first rule of war according to a Jewish value system. But first, I want to ask you a question. Okay, you ready for a question? In Israeli history, modern day Israeli history, which war did Israel begin preemptively? The 6-Day War. And that's correct. And this is a brilliant example of the effectiveness of this statement of the Talmud, that if someone is coming to kill you, rise up to kill them first. In the 6-Day War, we saw precisely how effective such a logic is. You're all familiar with the history. We don't need to talk about how within a few hours Israel managed to destroy the entire Egyptian Air Force, or almost the entire Egyptian Air Force. It just changed the entire war in 6 days. We quadrupled in size. We could talk about it for a long time, but then we won't get to the stuff we want to talk about. That's a little more difficult to talk about. It was amazing. Contrast that with the Yom Kippur War, 1973, in which Israel did not preemptively strike. And it's not because they didn't know a war was coming. They actually did know it was coming. But due to political reasons, they chose not to preemptively strike. Totally different story. And I want to repeat, Israel knew what was going to happen. In September 25th, Yom Kippur War was October 6th. On September 25th, Jordan's King Hussein secretly met with the leaders of Israel to the king of Jordan, not like, this is high quality information, to tell them definitively that Egypt and Syria were planning a joint war against Israel. This was no secret. On the morning of Yom Kippur, it's famous, if you read the diary of Golda Meir, she writes about this at 4 a.m. on Yom Kippur morning. The phone in her house rang, and it was her military secretary, Yisrael Lior, and they told her that information is coming in. Again, decisive information, clear information that the war is starting this afternoon. They immediately scheduled a meeting. They had a meeting with the prime minister and with the chief of staff and IDF, and there was two issues. Should they call up the reserves, which would create panic, and should they preemptively strike like they did in Yom Kippur? And at this meeting, they were very worried. And she said, the Golda Meir writes, this is her own words, that she said, I know all the arguments in favor of a preemptive strike. I'm reading from her own words, but I'm against it because we don't know, any of us, what the future will hold. But there's always a possibility that we'll need help. And if we strike first, then we won't get the help that we need. And in fact, to concretize this idea in her mind, Kenneth Keating, who was the U.S. ambassador to Israel at that time, actually arrived at the prime minister's office that morning while they were in the meeting. She went out to go talk to the U.S. ambassador, and she told him what's going on. And he came back later with a message from Henry Kissinger that Israel better not attack first. They should not be the ones to start the war. If they want any American help, they cannot attack first. So Golda Meir says, I did the right thing, because if we would have needed help, which they did, we didn't need help, we wouldn't have gotten if we would have attacked first. So before we get into if that was a right choice or a wrong choice, let's just clarify the difference in war, in outcome of war between the 6-day war and the Yom Kippur War. Besides for the fact that we lost 2,500 Karbanis, 25 innocent, beautiful Jewish young lives, the soldiers that had their whole lives ahead of them that were killed on Yom Kippur, aside for the tens of thousands that were wounded, etc., several other things happened. From then on, Israel experienced a trauma it had not experienced before. We had never experienced that kind of threat to our existence, that kind of almost defeat that totally changed the mood in Israel and in many ways. I don't want to get too into it. The whole mood of Israel changed. The desire to stand strong, a desire to give up. The mood of Israel changed. Secondly, we lost the respect of the world that we used to have as this unbelievably powerful military that was able to do miracles in 6 days. And now we were a regular military. And even though eventually, ostensibly, we won by not being killed, but we were no longer the force that we had been reckoned with after 1967. And third, it undermined Israel's deterrence. The Arabs used to be, I've heard this from so many Israeli soldiers that tell me, remember after 67, Arabs would be quaking in their boots. They saw an Israeli soldier walking by. They were scared of an Israeli soldier. Today, they come up to their faces, little kids. You see the video, you see that it's horrific to watch. They spit at them, they taunt them, they throw stones at them. They're in their faces with the video cameras, of course, and everyone videoing. And the Israeli soldiers are metaphorically with their hands behind their back. And the kids are taunting them. But this transition, this shift, this paradigm shift, where Israel lost its deterrence in the Arab world, began in 1973. This picture on the screen actually is from a museum in Egypt called the 6th of October Panorama. If you don't read Arabic, that's what it says. 6th of October Panorama. And in this museum, they have burnt out Israeli tanks. and they have all these beautiful pictures of the Sinai Desert, and they tell the Egyptian school children the story of the Egyptian people's victory over Israel in 1973. So that's what that museum is for. And the point is that even though we quote unquote won by not being killed, we didn't win. We didn't win. We walked away from that war long term. Aside from having overcome the threat to our existence at the moment, long-term damage is still being inflicted on Israel from what we lost at that time. Everything I said makes sense so far? So what's the counter-argument? The counter-argument is that if we would have preemptively struck in 1973 against the instructions of America, we would not have gotten the American airlift that came and helped us on the 9th day of the war. America finally sent us weapons, they sent us arms, and if not for listening to America, we wouldn't have gotten their support, and we wouldn't have been able to fight the war. That is the classic response to those that don't agree that we should have preemptively struck the way the Talmud tells us to. It's not my opinion. The Talmud tells us to preemptively strike. So that's their response. And first of all, although we can debate and we can argue whether or not it's true, and in fact, 3 years later, there's a tremendous research done by Martin Indyk, who would later become the U.S. ambassador to Israel about this war, and he wrote extensively how Israel would have had similar results to the 6-day war if we would have preemptively struck. We could have destroyed the entire Syrian Air Force, 90% of their Syrian missile bases within 3 to 6 hours, at a price of less than 10 Israeli lost airplanes. If we would have taken over their Air Force, the whole war would have been different. First of all, there were tens of thousands of Israeli sorties, of Israeli air missions. That would have been totally different, wouldn't even been necessary. Would have saved so many lives of Israeli Air Force soldiers. And then the effectiveness of the tanks and the regular army that was on the ground, the Israeli fatalities would have been much less. The effectiveness of the Israeli forces would have been much more effective. We would have had complete, absolute Air Force support the way we had in 1967. So many strategists and researchers believe that we would have won the war very, very quickly. And that America would have still supported Israel, regardless. But that's not the point. That's not the point. You know why? Because if we would have preemptively struck, we never would have needed America's help in the first place. We only needed America's help because we allowed ourselves to be attacked first. So the argument that if we would have attacked first, we wouldn't have gotten America's help is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. We're not going to need their help. So, okay, so let's wait to be attacked so we'll get the help. If we would have attacked first, we never would have needed their help. And here you see the Rebbe talks about this with such pain.
Wie kommt es, nicht gefolgt dem Mumchen bei Jona Milchoma? Hat mir gefunden eine Berechtigung. Aber Schaas hat gesehen, hat gebracht auf 9. Tag. Auf 8. Tag, Neschek von Nazis Abris, hatten sich damals gefreut, als Seidner wollte sie nie gefolgt, es wohl gewähren an Milchemes Mona, wollten sie nicht geschickt dem Neschek auf 9. Tag, was in der ganze Hazdocke fällt der Rike, als wohl gewähren an Milchemes Mona, wollte nicht gedacht haben an Milchome bemäßig von 9 Tag. Na, wie sie gewähren in die 6 Tage, als die gerufene 6 Tage, Milchomo, es wohl gewähren als Sachfried, der Nizochen Gomor, was auf Drufi gewähren genug der Neschek, was man gehabt, umgegräht in der Machsane mit den verschiedenen Äbten, in Eretz Akedisch, befragt noch eben die Milchemes Mann, wohl gewähren mit der Schof früher, worum kaum hat nicht nur gewusst, Bichlal, als mit Gräßig in Amalchemes Astkofo, mod gehad a Jedie Bruru, und mit kam es dort in Wendes wird sich anheben, und mod gehad die volle Möglichkeit, abhoben den Gius und hoben den Milchemes Manna, die Präventiv war, kam es schon es lief nicht sehr, wo demut wird sich das geendigt, noch Mistam, alpi Derech HaTeva, eben zu den Milchemes 6 Jahre gewähren mit Derech HaTeva, a Sach Kitzer, wie in 6 Tagen, und es wollte geöffnet geendet, Korom und Leil in Anefen, als wohl gewähnt genug dem Neschek, was man hat gehabt, genug angesammelt, man hat nicht gedacht, umkommen zu Neschek Nesef.
Okay, So it's very clear. Yay. On the 9th day, America sent us weapons. When we preemptively struck, there wasn't even a 9th day left to the war. The war was over after 6 days. And this is so important, especially because if we would have this strength to be able to recognize that we need to follow Torah guidelines to preemptively attack those that are coming to kill us, this would save lives on all sides of the equation, on both sides of the battlefield. Because when the war ends in 6 days, less people die. When you extend a war, when you drag out a war, the longer it drags for, the more people that die on both sides of the war. And in fact, I'm going to just quickly share a text. This was one of the many times Rebbe spoke about this, where he, at the end of the talk, it was on the 3rd of Tammuz in 1982, where the Rebbe gave, at the end of his talk, the Rebbe said, I'm going to give every single person $1 to give to charity, especially for the merit of the soldiers of the IDF, that they may succeed in finishing the operation with minimal losses, or better yet, no losses at all. And then the Rebbe says, and the Rebbe said this many times, that by swiftly completing the operation, it's not just going to help Israel. That will also prevent unnecessary enemy casualties. They too are human beings created in the image of God, and it is the duty of the Jew to also care for the lives of each and every non-Jew. So we have to realize that this value the Torah tells us, that we need to be ready to stand up and to kill those that come to kill, is not just something which will help defend Jewish lives. It's something that will also help defend non-Jewish lives. And in fact, as you're going to see in the next video, I'm going to show you that the Rebbe often said that the Talmud doesn't say, rise up and kill him. It says, rise up to kill him. Meaning, just our showing our willingness to rise up to defend ourselves will already prevent any war from ever even taking place. And this is a critical point. Critical point. It's a compassionate point. The point is not that we want to show that we're more tough than you so we can kill you before you kill us. The point is that when we show we're willing to defend ourselves, we prevent the bloodshed from ever taking place. Let's see this next video.
Schaas me weiß, dass da einer, was bolle Horgo, ist unter dem und nie der Seide. Aber wir da sitzen und warten, bis wann nicht alle Goyim und Masken sein. Und mit Pasken in dem Dien in einer Sife von 119 Members von Goyim. Also der Goyim wird am soll ihm schmeißen. Und unter dem wird machen eine Sife von dem Minyaniden. Als seine Nechet Maske mit 119 Goyim, nie dass der Seder auf mit dem, was hat, was wolle Horder. Früher bringt den Dien in Belgien, in die UN, dort sich zusammenkleiden, die alle Anoschen Tzadikim wie Schori, Huse wollen das tun, Nordre wollen sein, bemocken, in dem Pläne, was haben dort mit Spaller gewinnt, zu dem und dem, was dort gesagt, warte, Urache, Komicho, mal die geben Apachen in Backe zu stellen, die zweite Back, und dennoch wollen sie aufpassen, wie der Ding von dem, was dort geschossen. Und dennoch wirst du Michel sein uns dem Folgen. Sagt die Tere, nein, nicht, dass sie der Seder. Nicht nur, dass sie nicht der Seder verlieren. Dem Goy macht das keine. Aber der Goy weiß, als bolle Orgel. Und du schickst da rein ein Papier, sich einer, den ich gesagt. Als wie du willst, gehen schlagen an jeden. Soll sie wissen sein, dass das ein gegen dem Charter. Und da sagt, mir kann eure Pschime nehmen, sucht in jeder Sache an, wir darf gar nicht ankommen, zu Achuk, die Geselle gesagt hat. Sie bolle Orge, hast mit dem nicht was zu teilen. Der erste sagt, dafür sein, Haschkim der Orge. Steht gar nicht Haschkim der Orge, steht da, dafür machen den Befehl. Sieht nicht kommen dazu. Also hat nur sein, du bist zugestanden, vertor, und schickst nicht kein Brille. Nur du bist zugestanden Almenas, als wird sich prüfen, Takel Orge. Ich sag, demol bist du Mochen, Haschkim Orge, wird hat nicht gehen zu dir.
It's brilliant. I mean, it's so simple. There's really, it's obvious, it's simple, it's clear, and it's exactly what the Torah is telling us to do. Yes, Ed. Oh, well, the Israeli leadership follow the Torah. So the simplest answer is, I'm not a prophet, so I can't tell you. But if history is any indication, the last 80 years have not shown many times where we've done that. There's been two examples in Israeli history where we preemptively attacked and saved many lives. The first is the 6-Day War. What's the second example? There was one other time when Israel preemptively attacked to destroy our enemies. The nuclear reactor in 1981, which is known as the Begin Doctrine. And I should have put the text onto the screen, but I didn't get a chance. But at that moment, when the whole world was angry at us. How dare we go into enemy territory and destroy an enemy facility of, I don't know, nuclear weapons. And we went and we destroyed the nuclear reactor about a month or so before it could have become operational. And guess what? How many lives did we save by doing that? We have no way of knowing. And if they would have ever used a reactor, could be tens and hundreds of thousands of all nationalities, of all countries would have died. So we didn't only save Israeli lives, Jewish lives by destroying the reactor. We saved tons of lives in all sides of many countries, of all sides of the fence or the battlefield by preemptively attacking and preemptively striking those that come to kill us. We save multiple lives. Yes, Mark.
So you showed us how really predicted what Iran was going to do. But Iran wants to attack Israel right now. So should Israel attack Iran right now?
Absolutely. The question was, should Israel attack Iran right now? So I want to stay focused on principles, not on specific, like what they should do. But the answer in general, should we attack an enemy that publicly declares their desire to annihilate us? The answer is unequivocal. The Talmud is saying it in black and white. It's not like some rabbinic interpretation. It's clear. Rise up to kill them first. And the point is that we have, when it says that those that are coming to kill you, rise up and kill them first, doesn't only mean they're actually coming with a gun or with a sword at your neck. When they're developing weapons that could kill you, for example, a nuclear reactor, we need to destroy it before they come to kill us. Not when they're already shooting the reactor. Now it's too late. Yeah.
So the answer to the gentleman's question, I need to say is no, because they've had two chances in the last few months. Actually, after October 7th, there were some in the military who were saying Hezbollah, Lebanon, they didn't do that, and about hitting Iran right now.
Correct. So Neil is saying, the answer to your question, Ed, is that the last few weeks, Iran has been threatening that they're going to get retaliation for us killing Haniya and all that. And what are we doing? We're passively waiting with our thumbs twiddling. We're not twiddling our thumbs. I mean, we're standing with our guns ready, but we're just waiting for them to attack us first. Yeah, but again, I'm not a prophet, so I don't know what they'll do tomorrow. Yeah.
Will not attack them because they know that they cannot be in a sustained war with Israel.
Okay. So
therefore, we already showed them that we're ready to
it's more than what you're saying. What you're saying is true. It's coming out reports that Iran knows they can't sustain a long-term war with Israel. But more than that, from the very beginning, Israel made very, very clear to all of our allies, so to say, that we will not refrain when they attack. We're going to wait for them to attack us because we're good boys. We don't want to, God forbid, make too much trouble, right? So we're going to wait for them to attack us first. But once they attack us, we had clear battle plans of us going into Lebanon, what we're planning on doing and how we're going to respond. And it was very clear, a lot of both public statements and private statements, that we're going to very quickly go from defense to offense. And the moment Iran heard that, which is basically us doing what the Talmud says, when they come to kill, you kill them first. The moment that they heard us saying we're going to switch from defense to offense, they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything, which just proves the point. Just proves the point of the truth and the wisdom of the Talmud, that when we are willing to rise up to kill, just willing to do it, that willingness is enough, alone is enough to defend ourselves and to defend people on the other side from being killed in unnecessary war and unnecessary bloodshed. On the flip side, when we don't do that, when we wait, I'm just going to put a quote here from his name should be erased forever and ever, from Joseph Goebbels, but it's Henry Kissinger quoted this, and he was right before, the day before they invaded Norway. Where was it over here? In 1933, in April of 1940. So this is what he says, that we managed to completely confuse and to hide, keep our enemy in the dark of our true intentions. He said, if I was the leader of the French premier, I would have said the guy that wrote Mein Kampf, that guy. When he says he wants to conquer Europe, maybe he means it. Maybe, just maybe. Actually, maybe he's really crazy enough to do that. But as he says, they left us alone to be able to slip through the risky zone and to sail around the dangerous reefs. And then when we were done and well armed, now they started to fight. Too late. Now already a well-armed army. Understand? So this is why the Talmud's truth that we need to stand up to fight, to kill, is not only when they're actually coming with weapons to kill, it's even when we see them planning. We see them building weapons. We see them, making a nuclear bomb, creating groups to do attacks. We need to already preemptively kill, and that will protect many, many lives, Jewish lives, Arab lives, all across the world. This is the first part of our discussion tonight, which is basically telling us, from a Jewish perspective, when do we begin a war? When do we commence hostilities? Okay, is that clear? Is the first part clear before I get to the next text? Is that clear? No questions. Okay, that's good. Now, the second thing we need to talk about, my dear friends, is when do we finish the war? Once we started, okay. If let's pray that Israel follows the Torah advice and we follow what the Talmud tells us and we preemptively strike. When we hear our enemies saying we want to annihilate Israel, we believe them. We actually take them on their word and we respond accordingly and don't wait till they actually come and put the gun to our head. We defend ourselves first. But now, how do we know when to stop the war? How do we know when we've accomplished our goals and when do we say, okay, enough bloodshed, enough killing, enough killing and murder, time to stop. We're a peace-loving nation. So let's see what the Torah says. Again, this is not my own theories, not a political position. This is straight out of the Bible. The Torah tells us in Deuteronomy, in Chumash of Dvarim, that when you besiege a city for many days to wage war against it, to capture it, you know what you should do? Besiege the city that makes war with you, ad ridita, until its submission. Until its submission. Which means you don't stop the war until you've won. Not until there's a ceasefire. Not until some ally or friend convinced you to give up on all of your military gains for the sake of stopping the bloodshed. You don't stop until the other side, the enemy, has surrendered. If you look at Israeli history, which wars have we won where the enemy surrendered? None. Never. Even the 6-day war. There's a truce. There's a ceasefire. There's still our enemies. They're still threatening to kill us. But as President Biden said, take your win. Okay, we got to win. We're going to stop. And we don't fight until we actually win. We fight until we've done enough damage that they have to take a temporary pause so they have time to rebuild and rearm. But that's not what the Torah says to do. The Torah says fight until the city that you're fighting has surrendered, until its submission. Until its submission. Okay, so we'll do this. We'll do the next video first and I'll show you. So the Rebbe talked about this so many times. What happens? You start a war and you don't finish. Ceasefire, truce, we'll retreat, we'll give you aid for a meantime, and then we'll come back next year. Okay, and then we go back and forth, and then we start again, finally, and then we stop. The moment we do a little bit, we stop, and then we go back. You know what it's like? I won't tell you. Let the Rebbe tell you. Beautiful example.
Danach bringt mir nach rein, nach Isha, Jore, Verachalivo. Und sieht, dass sie vergisst sich die erste 3 Tropfen Blut, hebt sich am Betten. Ist seit Mafsig. Ist doch angehend schneiden, angehend dem nicht tun. Seit ist Mafsig, soll sich der Patient erholen und werden zurück. Kommen zu seiner Kirche, ist demnach wird machen den zweiten nicht tun. Danach der zweite nicht tun, Torne nicht machen wie Basachas. Sie gießt auf das Blut, so das Lero von dem Patient, darf machen dem nicht durch, in nicht stollen, wenn wir auf das so.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Bischaß Emischer, was sich erlebt, sagen, als Ami sagt, dann geht zu Bries, a Gub, gepschute, wenn geht zu Bakterien, versteht man sich, was man mit ihm getan und wie man wollte ihm gefolgt. Hat man getan, hat die Sache mit der 3 Millionen Nieden geheben. Gemacht an die Tuach, noch hat man gebracht, Haisha Jore, Veroch Alevo, hat geheißen, machsig sein, hat man nicht gewollt folgen, und geht machen an Asife, hat gesagt, sie sind nicht demokratisch, und man darf fragen bei Zweiten, und da so kann fragen in Deutschland. Und danach gewesen weiterer See und wiederer See, hat man gemacht, der Zweiten nicht durch Hiebe gehasert, dieselbe Sache. Der Dritten nicht durch Hiebe gehasert, dieselbe Sache. Wie ist dort der Fette nicht durch, was man schon ihm getan? Und man hat schon gebracht, Korbonis, weil Hashem hing im Dom. Hunderte Menschen mit hunderten Psuien. Und nicht es fällt einem, an Einfall, zu 2, zu 3, zu 4, als Gedei, der Matze soll bringen zu der Schule. Wie kann jese Basei, was dazu diese losen die Wund, als sie soll sein mit allen Bakterien, mit allen Sachen, nur dann, Leponim, werden die Bakterien rüberlegen, von den Nortina zweiten.
Brilliant. It's a brilliant example, right? We're going to do a surgery, but we don't want it to be too painful. We want to be very, very humanitarian in the surgery and very kind and peaceful and loving. So I won't do the full surgery one shot. That may be too traumatic. So we'll do it in installments. We'll do like the first 5 inches the first day. We'll let you heal. Then we'll do the second part. Then we'll come back. It's a good analogy. So this is the Rebbe said this in 1982 regarding the Lebanon war. The PLO was in the southern part of Lebanon. They were in 1 year, there had been 270 terrorist attacks from Lebanon into Israel, plus like 20 something outside of Israel where the PLO was attacking Jews. Enough is enough. So we go into Lebanon. We came till we surrounded West Beirut where Yasser Arafat and his henchmen and all the leaders of the PLO was hanging out. And then America convinced us, don't go into West Beirut. They made a peace agreement and a ceasefire. And we gave them safe exit to go to Tripoli, and so we moved the bacteria. Okay, so now you're not in West Beirut, so now you still hate us. You still say you're going to kill us. So we're not going to kill you, God forbid, even though you say you'll kill us, because that'll be finishing the surgery. So we'll let you move from Lebanon to Tripoli. Okay, so the doctor gets his check because, I'm saying, you do the surgery. In the meantime, the bacteria is still in the body. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. We're not fighting a war until the end. We're not fighting until we win. We're fighting until the other side decides they're ready for a ceasefire. As long as they're not ready for a ceasefire, we can continue fighting. When they're ready, okay, now we got to stop. That's not how you fight wars. That's how you prolong the cycle of violence that we've been in for 80 years. Yeah.
Stopped a lot of things, but they use them to scare the people to evacuate. They're going to evacuate right with the.
So again, tonight's discussion is a good question, and tonight's discussion is not to justify or to explain modern day Israeli government or IDF policy or behavior. I'm not an expert in the IDF. I'm here to tell you what the Torah says we should do. We have to have clarity in what Torah says, what God says. When we have clarity, then next week we'll talk about how to present that to the world. But we need to have absolute clarity in what is Jewish values. People walk around with this very, very misconstrued sense of what the Torah wants us to do as Jews to defend our homeland. It's important to understand that the idea of conquering a city until its submission is not some made-up, hard, hawkish, right-wing idea. It's an idea that was taken from the Bible. Again, it's not political. The Torah tells us fight until the city surrenders. And that's what we need to do. I'm going to give you an excellent example. Yeah, I'll take a question on an excellent example.
So, kind of takes that. Curious what the Talmud says. I think the traitor is giving cover to the enemy. There's a bunch of Jews who take part in these protests, and they say they're anti-Zionist, and they give the rest of the world that, hey, look, the Jews. There's even a lot of Jews that are against what Israel is doing. What does the Talmud say about those people?
The PR battle. The PR battle is next week's conversation, so I'm not going to get distracted tonight. No, it's an important conversation. That'll be a full class of its own. Now we have to we're not done yet with the security aspect of how we defend our homeland. I want to give you an excellent example, my friends. Okay, do you know what the key, most important difference is between World War I and World War II? What was the greatest difference, the greatest example that differentiates between the way World War I ended and the way that World War II ended? Exactly. World War I ended with this, an armistice, a truce, where the different nations came together. They probably had a nice cup of coffee before and some good food, I'm guessing, and they signed some kind of an agreement and a truce saying that the war is over. Did that end the war? No. If you know anything about world history, you know that the Germans kept this idea in their mind that they hadn't really lost. In fact, it created a tremendous anti-Semitism in Germany because this very anti-Semitic propaganda began to spread of what's called the stab in the back myth, where the stab in the back was that really Germany never lost the war militarily. But there were Jewish traitors that were at these meetings that stabbed Germany in the back and pretended like we lost, and really we have to reclaim our honor and our glory because militarily we never lost World War I. It was a stab in the back. And because World War I didn't end with surrender, again, this is a historical fact, but because, and I don't think any historian will disagree with this, because World War I did not end with an absolute unconditional surrender. It ended with an armistice, with a truce. The leaders of the Allied forces made a very, very clear decision in 1943 that they would not end the war until they received unconditional surrender. They must have known the Bible. And in fact, it wasn't just enough for them to get surrender in some kind of boardroom, in a hotel, office where they would meet and they would have a formal signing of a declaration. They insisted on having a military victory parade where the Allied forces marched through the streets of Berlin. They marched through the streets of Berlin. This way, the people, the citizens, the civilians of Germany should know that you guys lost the war. And guess what? That worked. There hasn't been a World War III just yet. Few close calls, but we haven't had a World War III just yet. Why? Because World War II was fought until the end. And if World War I would have been fought until the end, who knows how many people would have been saved? 80 million people, I think, were killed in World War II. 80 million people that died in World War II. Can you imagine if we would have fought a little more in World War I until the surrender of Germany? There never would have been a World War II. But that's what happens when we take the gain early. We take the armistice, we take the truth, and we don't follow the truth and the wisdom of Torah. And we don't fight ad ridita until the surrender and submission of the enemy. And this, my friends, is perhaps one of the greatest military mistakes that Israel consistently makes over and over again, where our soldiers fight heroically, our soldiers fight bravely, our soldiers fight with such tremendous courage and successfully. And they accomplish things on the battlefield that the rest of the world watches in awe and admiration. Look at these Israeli soldiers. Look at how smart, how effective, how talented, how brave they are. We do amazing things in the battlefield. And then we stop before we finish. We're so close to the finish line. Imagine you're running a marathon and you stop 200 feet before the finish line because you got bored, you got tired, you got afraid of hurting someone's feelings. Let's start the next video. It's going to be very powerful.
The Israelis began advancing in all fronts, and they arrived at more or less 40 kilometers from Damascus. It was already the 5th day of the war. I get a call from Benjamin Klein. The Rebbe said, go and ask Dayan to enter Damascus.
בשמחת תורה, אני ושלמה לוין, הקונסול, ניסינו להסביר לרבי שמשה דיין פוחד מהתערבות רוסית לטובתם של הערבים, ואז מצבנו יהיה רע מאוד, לא בטוח מה יעשו האמריקאים. הרבי אמר לו, אין טעם, אין היגיון בתפיסה הזאת. הוא אומר שהרוסים סתם מאיימים, לא צריך לחשוש מהרוסים. האמריקאים מעוניינים שאנחנו ננצח את הסורים, הם רק לא אומרים לנו את זה. והרבי ביקש מאיתנו, בתום שיחה ארוכה מאוד, שנחזור עוד באותו ערב, ונטלפן, כל אחד למי שהוא מכיר, הוא יכול לטלפן, לראש הממשלה, או לשר הביטחון, או למישהו אחר מראשי השלטון בישראל, תגידו בשמי שישראל צריכה לסיים את מלחמת יום הכיפורים בכיבושה של דמשק.
Dayan took it very seriously. He said to me, I cannot do it from a manpower point of view. I called back Benjamin, and then the Rebbe was on the line. The Rebbe's answer was, it's a big mistake. It's a big mistake, that all.
הוא אמר לי, תשמע, מלחמת יום כיפור, תוצאות לא טובות. אומר, רבי, תראה, מבחינה צבאית, אנחנו הגענו ל-101 קילומטר מהבירה המצרית. אנחנו הגענו ל-40 קילומטר מהבירה הסורית. הוא אומר, לא. מנצחים, הרבי אומר, זה שכובשים את הבירות. אמרתי, כן, אבל היו בעיות לוגיסטיות. הוא אומר, מה שרון סיפר שאין לו דלק? הוא היה צריך להשתמש בדלק שהמצרים הכינו בשבילם. על המצרים, אומר הרבי, תכננו התקפה, כלומר, לאורך הדרכים והנתיבים, בטוח שהיה לה בצבורי דלק. ולמה לא השתמשו בדלק הזה ולהגיע לבירות?
Understand? Powerful, powerful. And the Rebbe had tremendous anguish from this, that we were so close. We were so close to entering Damascus. There was nothing stopping us. You know what was stopping us? Our fear of what will America say if we actually show the Syrians that we actually won the war. And the same thing with going into Cairo. Today there's a museum in Egypt declaring the victory of the Yom Kippur War. You know why they're able to do that? Because we didn't enter Cairo. We could have. Militarily, we could have. But internally, as far as our strength, as far as our ability to act on the wisdom of the Torah, that was lacking. And because it was lacking, we didn't. And because we didn't, the cycle continues, and our deterrence is weakened, and our enemies feel they have the ability to continue to attack us. Okay. So now we've talked about when we begin war, and we've talked about when we conclude war. All clear so far? Good. I'm watching on live, there's a chat, okay. So now comes the third Jewish value, which is how do we determine if there's a threat to our lives? So this is the next question. How do we know if we're even being threatened or not? That's the next question that we need to address now. How do we determine what is indeed considered a threat? At what point do we say there's a threat that we need to stand up to defend ourselves? At what point do we not? 1 second, where we are.
The Israelis began advancing in all fronts.
There we go, okay. So, I'm going to read to you a law in Shulchan Aruch, a law in the Code of Jewish Law, which seemingly is a very simple law, but yet again, it's a basic Jewish value system on how we determine our threats. So it is from chapter 329, halacha number 6. It says as follows: if non-Jews besiege Jewish cities, is that a threat? Do we fight on Shabbos? It depends. If their goal is monetary, we do not desecrate the Shabbos to protect ourselves. But if they came to kill, or they came with no presented reason, we go out with weapons and desecrate the Shabbos and battle them. Makes sense, right? We all understand this logic. If someone's coming to kill you on Shabbos, absolutely. Close the prayer book, close the Torah, put away the food from your Shabbos table and go to war. That's obvious. But are you allowed to desecrate Shabbos to save money? No. So it's clear that if they're coming for money, we can't fight for money. But if they're coming to kill Jews, then of course we got to go fight on Shabbos. However, there's one circumstance, one condition that changes everything. The law continues and says that in a city near the border, even if they just come to plunder straw or hay, we initiate a military offensive, even if this entails desecrating the Shabbos. If it's a border city, and they say, oh, we just want straw. That's all. Now, what's straw? Straw is nothing. But since it's a border city, the Torah is telling us that an entirely different set of rules apply to border cities. Even if they're only coming for straw and hay, even when they tell us we're not coming to kill you, we just want your straw. because it's a border city, we have to go out with weapons on Shabbos to stop them. Why? What's the logic? So the commentaries explain that border cities are different because they become a launching pad into the land of Israel. And once they see how easy it was for them to get a foothold into our land, that's the beginning of the end. So if it's a regular city and non-Jews come, a gang comes to fight for money on Shabbos, we don't fight on Shabbos. But if it's a border city, even if they're only coming to get money, they're coming for straw. Because this border city will become the launching pad, will become the foothold by which our enemies will be able to enter the land of Israel, or any land for that matter. At that moment, we put away the prayer book, we leave the Shabbos table, and we go to fight. You know why? Because the Torah is telling us that losing a strategic position will lead to a life and death situation. Once you're giving up strategic territory, once you're giving up a place of strategic importance, you've already begun a decline that becomes very, very dangerous. You're already in a state of pikuach nefesh, in a state of life and death. And therefore, follow me, my friends, in this logic. Okay, this is the way we learn. Which means, number one, that when we're being attacked in a strategic location, we desecrate the Shabbos now to defend our borders from what may be an attack in the future. Normally, we don't desecrate Shabbos now for a possible attack. You don't drive on Shabbos because maybe someone will have a heart attack. You know what I'm saying? If they had a heart attack, then you go to, like preemptively go drive before the life is in danger. But to defend the border city, we defend the border now because of what may be an attack later, giving up strategic land. Number two, when do we desecrate the Shabbos? Even when they state clearly that they only want straw. And they say we come in peace, we come looking for straw, our friends, we love you, we just want your straw. Jewish straw is very special straw. Doesn't make a difference. Jewish straw, special straw. Just reminded of a joke. I think I'll tell you a joke. Why not? But a quick joke, because I can't go for so long, like an hour, without a joke. No one's falling asleep, God forbid, but still. So this Israel, this Jews on the train in Russia, and this anti-Semite, big peasant sitting next to him says, "How come you Jews are so smart? They're so smart." Jews trying to ignore, like you never win a fight with a Russian peasant, but he doesn't leave him alone. How come you Jews are so smart? So finally, this smart Jewish boy tells the Russian peasant, "Because of our herring." Our herring, I think, the straw, right? Jewish herring. It says herring. It says Jewish herring is very special. Very, very special. So what are you talking about? It says, try it. If you want, I'll sell you some of my Jewish herring. Eat it and see if you get smart. Okay, he's tempted. How much is your Jewish herring? 20 kopek. 20 kopek for a piece of herring. It costs normally, a kopek, 5 kopek. Okay, but listen, Jewish herring, trying to get smart. So the Russian peasant gives him 20 kopek. He gives him a piece of his herring. He eats the herring. He's Jewish. Okay, Then after he finishes eating, he says, I just paid 20 kopek for a piece of herring. I can buy herring for 5 kopek. The Jewish boy says, you see, it's working already. That was off the cuff, but I guess it was really good. So Jewish straw, not like to say, come in peace. We don't want to fight. We don't want to kill you. We just want straw. But since they want straw from a strategic border town, on Shabbos, we go to fight to defend that strategic border town from our straw-loving neighbors. Okay. Number C, most importantly, if not only we have to fight on Shabbos to defend our borders, how much more so and how obvious it must be to anyone that follows Jewish law that you can never willingly give away such territory. To go and give away land, the Torah says, desecrate the Shabbos to keep this land. I'm going to go give it to you for free, for a promise of peace, so I'm going to get to that soon. You can't give away land that's strategically protecting you. You're obligated to fight for that land. You're obligated to risk your life, to take weapons on Shabbos to fight to keep this land safe and secure, not to go give it away. So what's considered strategic territory in Israel? Every single inch of Israel is strategic territory in Israel. Again, I have limited time, and there's so many aspects, and we all understand this, that in general, in any war, and anywhere in the universe, there's no currency like the currency of land, right? We understand that. That's what you fight wars for land. But in Israel, especially, where, if America would lose a mile of land on the Mexican border, okay, Florida would still be safe. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can give up a little bit of Texas. It's a little California, depending on which side of the political aisle. Okay, give up a little of California. But I'm saying, in Israel, there isn't a single inch of Israel that's not strategically important to the land. We have very limited what's called defensive depth. Defensive depth means that when you fight a war, you need to have some maneuver room, some strategic room that you can, if you need to pull back, to regroup, to reposition. You need to have that ability to have a little bit of maneuvering depth. And not only that, Israel is so narrow and so tiny that if we were to go back to our original borders to give away any of that land, we literally you can't even run a marathon, half a marathon across one width of Israel to the other. I think that's a half marathon. We'll have to tell Steve to go try it and tell us. Not only that, besides for the strategic value of land and the defensive depth that Israel needs to maintain to keep itself safe in Israel, you have rockets that come from our friends from all over. And if you go to the south, you're near the border, you have 10 seconds. I'm being Sderot and hearing from the people in Sderot that you have 10 seconds. You can never be more than 10 seconds from a shelter. It'll take 10 seconds for a missile, for a rocket. They don't have a missile, they have Katyushas and whatever to come. Imagine that we would have enemies living all around Israel, and we would give away land where the West Bank would be all Arab territory. Anywhere in Israel, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, all these places would be within mile, 2 miles, 3 miles. We would have 10 seconds, 20 seconds to run. No time. Every piece of land, every inch of land is another second that it takes for a missile to come from an enemy territory, another second for the Iron Dome or whatever it is to be able to calibrate and to destroy it. Every single piece of land, every inch has strategic value in defending our homeland, our homes, our civilians, our schools, our hospitals from rockets, from missiles, from enemies. And therefore in Israel, there's no part of Israel that isn't strategically important. Give away another mile of Israel, enemy tanks can get to Tel Aviv or to Jerusalem a minute faster. Rockets can reach the number of rockets that can reach further into the depth, into the homeland of Israel. The sooner they can reach Israel, the more lives that could, God forbid, be lost. And therefore, every inch of Israel is strategically important. Every inch. Which means something very, very interesting. I think it's a little bit extreme, but it's very simple. When we talk about defending every inch of Israel and never giving away any Israeli territory, it's not because Israel's a holy land, because of the spiritual significance of the land of Israel, because of the historical significance of the land of Israel. It's simply a matter of preserving life. It's simply a matter of defending lives from being killed. And that's why there's an amazing, very sharp letter from the Rebbe to the previous chief rabbi of England. His name was Rabbi Jacobowitz. And he was a leader. He was the former chief rabbi of England. And he actually was, when they were discussing giving away land for peace, so he wrote that we should give away land for peace, but not from the holy places of Israel, like the old city of Jerusalem. That we shouldn't negotiate. But, other lands that are not so holy and not so historical, those lands we could give away. And the Rebbe consistently said, absolutely not. And in the Rebbe's mind was the exact opposite. The Rebbe said that giving away, I didn't make a slide of this in the end, that to fight, to lose Israeli soldiers, to defend the old buildings of the old city of Jerusalem is not worth it. Is that about the holiness or the sanctity of Jerusalem or of any part of Israel? It's simply about the fact that we need to do anything and everything we can by the Jewish value system of defending the infinite value of life. And therefore, since every single part of Israel is a strategically important, quote unquote, border city, that once we allow enemies to take hold and to get comfortable in those places, even if they pretend to only be coming for straw and hay, at that moment, we need to do everything we can, including fighting on Shabbos, desecrating Shabbos, taking weapons on Shabbos, in order to defend our border cities, our strategically important locations in the land of Israel. And this is not a secret. I mean, the IDF knows this, everyone knows this, and yet, time and time again, Israel considers giving away land for promises that maybe one day they won't hurt us, and maybe one day they'll be our friends afterwards. When the Torah tells us clearly, even when they say they come in peace, if it's strategically important, we are not allowed to give it away. We're required by Jewish law to fight to defend those strategically important border cities. Show you another powerful video.
In der Rotzen von der Meibischen, aber Schaße kommen zu gehen nicht hin und sagen, dass sie wollen nehmen, zunehmen bei jedem Teven wie Kasch, bei jedem, was leben in Chutzloret, und sie redet sich wegen Aschettig in Chutzloret, und sie redet sich wegen Teven wie Kasch. In der Breite der Eben Habechen, die wissen, was man darf tun, steht in Schulchan Aruch Dvorim Brurim. Aber man darf nicht kommen zu Chochmas Bosser Vadam. Und man darf nicht kommen zu seinen Pschättler. Und man darf nicht kommen zu seinen Svoris, worin der Rebester hat Tiber gegeben hat, zu Anoshim, Smuchim, Mish mit Peish von Mesher Rabbeinu, was Mesore Lishu oder noch der Achardei, bis zu dem Beis Yosef und dem Ramoi Shulchan Aruch, und sie haben gesagt, dass sie auf die Mine nicht, was sie mir bett und was mir bett. Eifs ist auch Schasch, als die Posach Horetz Lifnehem, darf man sich stellen mit Neshek, a viele Bishabos, und a viele, als sie mehr nicht, wie man macht mich in Uboi. Der Tam ist auf zu bewohnen, scheleit die Posach Horetz Lifnehem. Und befragt nach, hat dort gar nicht gedacht, umkommen. Motlich hat viele gesagt, dass einer hat gesagt, dass darf haben Teven wie Kasch. Hat gleich mäßig gewesen. Als der Bruder und der gute Freund und wird sich rechnen mit der das Verachelen von anderen Umis. Und jene Umis haben gleich gesagt, dass sie willen nicht nur die Posach Horetz Lifnehem, sondern sie willen Kol Horetz.
Okay. It's very clear. And by the way, this law, the Code of Jewish Law, is talking about people that officially don't want to kill us. They officially only want straw. And hey, we are not talking about people that want Jewish straw. They want Jewish blood. And they're not shy about it. They're not like, beating around the bush or pretending and using politically correct language to say it. They're pretty clear. We're coming to kill. Okay. So let's summarize what we've said over here so far, okay? This supreme value that Torah places on preserving life dictates to us three things we've learned tonight. We're going to review right now. What's the first Jewish value we learned? Life above all, and therefore if someone is coming to kill you, you rise to kill them first, which means that by Jewish law, we must preemptively eliminate any kind of threat to our security, whether it's an active shooter, whether it's someone planning a bomb, whether it's someone building military capabilities. Any time that someone is coming, we need to show that we're willing to stand up first to defend ourselves. And just showing we're willing to do it, that alone is enough to deter them and to save lives on all sides, that no one should have to die. The second Jewish value we learned tonight is, who is paying attention? How do we fight wars? When do we fight wars? The Torah tells us, beseech the city until its submission. The enemy needs to be fought until it is unequivocally defeated, until it doesn't exist. Not until they call a ceasefire so they have time to get more humanitarian, quote unquote, humanitarian aid to smuggle into their tunnels, to rebuild, to rearm, to regroup. We need to fight wars where we go into their capitals and show that we've won the way the Allied forces did after World War II. And the third Jewish value we learned is? Yeah, we desecrate Shabbos, very good faith, that when there's a city near the border, even if they're just coming for hay, because it's strategically important, we must fight for it. We may never, by Jewish law, cede a strategic defensive position. These are the clear values that the Torah is telling us how we need to defend our homeland and how we need to fight to keep our people safe. Unfortunately, someone made a question. I should just say one thing before I go to the next video, that sadly, so the question was asked, I'd asked, will Israel get the memo? Will they get the memo? I mean, Bibi's not sitting here in the room, but sadly, how has Israel behaved? Let's go through the three things. What does Israel do? Usually, we wait to be struck before responding. We always we tick for tat, and they do this, and then we'll do that, and then we'll do that, and then we'll do that. And instead of preemptively killing our enemies and eliminating security threats, what do? We wait. Iran's coming to kill us, okay? We'll wait. We'll keep our seatbelts on. Everyone stay tuned. Live in threat, live in fear, because we can't do anything till they attack us first, so we'll have permission to then attack them. We don't do that. Second thing that Israel does over and over again, instead of besieging the city till its submission, what do? We settle for ceasefires. We settle for not even a half victory. It's taking victory out of the like taking candy out of the mouth of a baby. Like, you're there. You got them to they realize they're in trouble. You're so close to finishing. Ceasefire. And what's the third thing we do? Instead of defending our strategic positions from the oil fields of Sinai to giving away the beautiful Gush Kativ, Gaza, Israel has been ready time and time again to give away hard-earned military and strategic positions in exchanges for a promise of peace. So we have three Jewish values, and unfortunately, I cannot say that Israel's track record is very good on any of these three. And I'll be very blunt now, okay? Let's not make a mistake. October 7th was a direct, not indirect, a direct result of Israel's non-adherence to the Torah's rules of war and peace. If Israel would have followed these basic Jewish values, October 7th would not have happened. The 1,200 people that were killed ruthlessly, brutally raped and murdered and kidnapped would not have happened if we would have kept our land destroyed, preemptively destroyed those who tried to kill us, if we would have defeated Hamas the last 4 or 5 times we went into Gaza instead of having ceasefires, if we would have kept our strategic positions instead of giving away Gaza and giving away all of the settlements that were there that were defending us and keeping Israeli presence nearby that they couldn't build up an army the way they did in Gaza, October 7th would have never happened. It only happened. We're only in the position we're in now, suffering the loss that we're suffering now, because we didn't follow any of these three basic Jewish values. Yeah. First of all, I don't remember your name. Remind me your name. Mark. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Hopefully we'll see you many more times. Yes. Okay, excellent question. Mark's question was that today we have a problem that we need America, right? It's an excellent question. Today we need America's help, and that will be one of the main topics of next week's conversation, how to deal with America. So this, and I promise you, it's an excellent question that I will address at great length, God willing, next week, so you're going to have to come back. But because that's be one of the main critical components of next week's conversation is how do we deal with our relationship with America and our allies. But for now, we need to understand what we need to do internally. We need to understand how we are meant to behave. And then we'll get to the technicalities called America and the UN and all that, God willing, next week. One last point. So all of this is clear? So good. I have time for one last final point. And before that, one last video, and then the final point. That's another video.
3-4 Mal nach Hanan, bei dem Mai mit dem Matze, was gewinnt, Kimat, Punkt. a Kopie von der Mami du Massaviste. Allemal ist das Schinui in der Welt in der Tor, hier öfter Zamzen bei der Jode. Es muss ein Schinui. Denn der Kudas, wo Pnimis, wird Technoinien, derselbe Mami du Massaviste, dieselbe Menschen, was davon durchführen, die Schliche, dieselbe Menschen oder Seele, Talmiden, was einem Mafria, und dieselbe Teines. Das ist der Weg zu Scholem, und das ist der Weg zu Tzaddik V'Yeshe, und das wird man haben, Maschine, Mese, Baum, Israel, und man darf sich rechnen, nicht, hey, Namla, wurde die ich gehe. Man muss ankommen zu Israel, Bechulu.
Oh. Why did it stop?
3, 4 Mal nach Hanan, bei dem Maime du Matze, was gewinnt, Kimat Punkt, a Kopie von dem Maime du Matze wisste. Allemal ist das Schinui in der Welt in der Tor, hier öfter Zamzen bei der Jode. Es muss ein Schinui. Denn der Kudas, wo Pnimis, wird Technoinien, derselbe Maime du Matze, dieselbe Menschen, was davon durchführen, die Schliche, dieselbe Menschen oder Seele, Talmiden, was einem Mafria, und dieselbe Teines. Das ist der Weg zu Scholem, und das ist der Weg zu Tzaddik V'Yeshe, und das wird man haben, Maschine, Mese, Baum, Israel, und man darf sich rechnen, nicht, hey, Namla, wurde die ich gehe. Man muss ankommen zu Israel, Bechulu.
I'm not sure what's happening, but you can clearly see the Rebbe's frustration and the Rebbe's angst and the Rebbe's deep, like frustration and sadness that we know what we need to do. The Torah gives us the answer, and yet over and over again, we consistently make the same mistakes. We're 80 years into this. And for 80 years, we keep on doing the same thing over and over. And what does Albert Einstein say? What is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. And so we're in the same cycle, and we're waiting for everyone else's approval, which we're going to talk about next week, and we don't act the way we know that we need to act according to Jewish law. So yes, right now, we'll see what ends up happening. But right now, at the moment, Netanyahu keeps on saying that we were not willing to stop the war. We'll take a temporary ceasefire to get our hostages back, but it's clear that we're not ending. We're going to go back in, and we're going to keep on fighting until we destroy Hamas. That is absolutely a Jewish value. And I've heard actually that many of these videos of the Rebbe were actually sent to Bibi's office, and that he watched videos of the Rebbe. This is a known that they were able to get to him shortly after October 7th. Bibi was very close to the Rebbe. He definitely accepted a lot of the wisdom of the Rebbe. And yet what he's saying now is absolutely what Torah would say, whether or not Israel will carry through and whether or not it will be a real ceasefire, a temporary ceasefire, not that a temporary, whatever. I'm not giving opinions on what Israel should do. A temporary ceasefire, as long as we're fighting, and it's clear that we're not going to give up until we destroy Hamas, and Hamas surrendered. But that's the problem. How do you get Hamas to surrender? You have to withhold military, whatever. Let's not go there right now. Okay. So, my friends, who decides what's considered a threat? What happens in Israel, you have different leaders, and some say, let's give land for peace. And some say, no, we got to kill the whole Gaza, flatten it to the ground, right? Then you have some who say, we can't do anything because America, whatever. We have all different leaders and all different opinions in Israel, right? In case you don't know, there's a lot of different opinions in Israel. In case you're not aware of it. Lots of different opinions. Somehow, every Jew has an opinion. I never heard of this before. Not in this show. Here, no one has an opinion. Only in Israel. No, I'm just joking. Jews have opinions, and every Jew. So how do you decide? How do you know if this particular battle, if it's worth it to fight, if we should stop? Like, how do we know if we've achieved our objectives militarily or not? Who decides what's considered a threat? And the answer is, I'll answer the question with a question. Who decides if someone should fast on Yom Kippur? You do?
Yeah. I decide.
For you. Okay, well, let's say you're not sure. Let's say you're not feeling well. Let's say you're on medication and you're not sure if you need it. You should take medication. You should fast on Yom Kippur. You call the rabbi. Say, Rabbi, what should I do on Yom Kippur? And what will the rabbi tell you? Call the doctor. Why do you call a doctor? It's a question about Yom Kippur. Because the rabbi is not a doctor. And in order for halacha, in order for Jewish law, for the rabbi to know whether or not you should fast on Yom Kippur, depends on the medical reality and what the trained medical professional says is the medical fact. And based on that, you can make halachic ruling. And so too, the only person or people that can give us direction on how to defend the land of Israel are our active military leaders and active intelligence leaders. And you may have an outlier, but you follow the majority. But I want to stress, they need to be actively in the military. And they need to be speaking as military people, not giving you their philosophical opinions on life or their philosophy on ethics, and not giving you geopolitical considerations. They need to be giving you black and white military facts. You know who we don't listen to? With all due respect, we don't listen to the politicians. And we don't listen to the diplomats because the politicians are dealing with, it's very difficult and it's important. And again, God willing, next we're talking about the considerations of diplomacy and how to deal with the universe that we live in. But at the end of the day, someone who's in politics, even if they were once a tremendously successful military general, even if they have an excellent career that when they once were in the military, but now they're no longer in the military. Now they're in politics. So now they're no longer speaking like a military general. Now they're speaking like a politician. And in case you don't know, politicians and generals don't speak the same way. Maybe the same language, but that's where it ends. Same, it's not the same.
Oh, we got fired.
Yeah. And so when a general tells you something from a military perspective, that's what you follow. The moment he becomes a theologian, or the moment he becomes an expert on world politics, now you got a problem. That's going to a doctor and getting a rabbinic interpretation and giving you a theology. That's not what we need a doctor for. And so this, my friends, is the Torah's perspective. It's very simple and it's very clear. The only challenge is that we need to understand that we need to live according to the Torah. And the Torah, as I said in the very beginning of tonight's conversation, is not just about for prayers and thoughts. Torah has real hard solutions by how to live. And when we follow Torah advice, like in 1967 in the Yom Kippur, in the 6-Day War, we experienced tremendous miracles, tremendous blessings, tremendous success. When we don't listen, when we sit with our hands folded, waiting to be attacked first, giving away our strategic, positions, we don't follow God, then unfortunately, like any other nation, we struggle with any other nation. This, my friends, is our security reality. Black and white, simple as it is. God willing, next week, we'll talk about how we can convey that to the world, how Israel can convey that to America, and how we can convey that to our friends, to our neighbors, how to share this. But first, we need to know it in our hearts. That's why this comes first. If you don't know something to be true, it's very hard to tell it to someone else. We need to have absolute confidence in the truth of Torah. We need to have absolute confidence that the Torah's value system is the most humane value system. It's not just the most effective. This is what will defend lives on all sides. This is what will lead us to be able to live securely in our homeland, because our enemies will be afraid to rise up against us. They've been deterred against us. And when we have that inner confidence, that inner strength, that inner conviction, first of all, we'll have God on our side. And secondly, we'll have the ability to lead our lives the way Torah says, which is guaranteed to be successful. Guaranteed. And then will come the challenge. How do we tell that to the world? And that, Bezrat Hashem, God willing, will be the topic of next week's conversation. I hope you all enjoyed. I definitely did. Thank you.